Good morning. Welcome to the Curriculum Committee meeting of the board. Today is Tuesday, October 8th. I did want to remind everyone that we're being videotaped today, so be sure to use your mic when you're speaking to the full group and when we're asking and responding to questions. Slight agenda change. We're going to have Mr. O'Brien, welcome, go first, and then we'll move into the after-school program and then follow the agenda as noted. Dr. Barcet.
No, you stole my thunder. No, actually, I want to say that really briefly, when I came into the district, I was very interested and really was attracted for a number of reasons, but been always interested in the IB experience. From what I've heard about it, I didn't experience it, but I've heard so many wonderful things about it. And when I applied to the district and found out that Lower Merion school district had a program, I was really excited in terms of wanting to learn as much as possible about the program. And no credit to mine, but I don't think Lower Merion could have found anyone better to lead the IB program. You've heard a lot about the IB program. And this is the first time in a very long time that we've had the pleasure of having Tom here, Mr. O'Brien, who's a coordinator of IB, give you some historical context to the program. You've heard anecdotally about how it's growing and the number of IB diplomas we give and things of that nature. But I thought, in conversation with you, Dr. Van Lynch, that maybe it was time for us to kind of recap and give a little more deeper perspective about the IB experience, which is a phenomenal experience and a flagship for the district. So I'm really happy that Tom is here, and I'm happy for his leadership. The successes would not have taken place without his leadership. And several weeks ago, we had an IB family night, which is at Harrington, was absolutely phenomenal. And it goes to show you the way in which our program attracts so many families. And I met so many families from all over the world. It was like the little UN. And it was fabulous. So with that, I'm going to give I can talk about this guy for a long time. So I'm going to give him the microphone.
Good morning. Thank you, Wagner, for that very kind introduction. And good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to join you this morning and to spend some time talking about a program that has been very influential in molding me as a professional, and a program that I feel very strongly about. So I'm very happy to be here with you this morning, and I'm very honored as well. I was asked specifically to talk with you a bit about the successes of our program and a little bit about possible future directions of IB and Lower Merion School District. I understand that some of you have much more intimate experiences with IB than others, and that your knowledge base about IB might be a little bit variable. So I'm going to include a little bit of background about the program itself, but also I invite you to invite me anytime you would like, and I'll be happy to come back and give a more detailed exploration of the nuts and bolts of the program, either to a larger group or to individual members, or however you would like that to happen. I'm more than happy to do that. So in talking about successes of the IB program, I'm going to talk quantitatively and qualitatively. I'm going to talk about some of the data that supports the success that we've had, and certainly some of those things that are a little bit less measurable, some of the anecdotal feedback and some of the warm fuzzy kinds of things like the IB socials that we have. In terms of talking about the future of IB, we'll talk about that within the context of the diploma program that we currently have, and if there is an appetite for looking at more avenues of international education within the district, there are opportunities that IB provides for that as well. Here's the timeline of our experience with IB going back to 1997. And in some ways that seems like a long time ago, and in some ways that seems like yesterday. In 1997, we officially took the plunge and became a school in investigation, entering the application phase to become an IB World School. To give you some context, I was hired as a Spanish teacher here in Lower Merion in 1996. So this has very much been a part of my experience here in Lower Merion. A couple of things to highlight here. In July of 2000, we became the 1,234th IB high school in the world, giving us the very convenient school code of 1234. It's a number that that's very easy to remember. A couple of other highlights in that timeline. In terms of data-driven support for our success, all IB schools have to go through a program evaluation once every 5 years. It's a very in-depth, full-year self-study that is then scrutinized by the IB organization. We've undergone program evaluation twice, one fairly recently in 2012. In both cases, the IB organization has given us great feedback and has told us that we are an excellent program and that we are meeting the expectations of the IB organization in terms of the philosophy that we present and the kind of diploma experiences that we do provide. In the second time around, we were asked to revise a couple of documents to make them a little bit more current with IB philosophy. We did that easily enough, and that was really just a matter of submitting new documents. So in both cases, the IB organization has endorsed us as being an excellent IB school. Some of the more qualitative events that are up there, Wagner had mentioned some of the community building things that we do, such as the social events. Community building sort of happened organically when we were a program of 12, 15, 20 juniors. Well, we now have 63 juniors in our program. So to sort of jumpstart that community building experience, we took all 63 of them on an overnight experience in Fellowship Farm, which was a fantastic opportunity for us to get to know each other, for the kids to get to know each other, which is really important because the bulk of our students came from our honors 10th grade experience. But there are students for whom IB is a stretch, and they came out of college prep classes, in some cases all college prep classes in 10th grade. And every year we have international families moving in to join our IB community. So this was a great opportunity to sort of warmly embrace the entire new IB student community. We also run annual field trips to New York, which we're in the process of beginning to organize now. And some of those, we also have, we've had 2 alumni reunions, and we've had an annual reunion of the previous IB graduating class so that they can receive their diplomas and certificates. So all of that is part of that more qualitative aspect of our program. So, IB in a nutshell. I usually do this in a 2-hour presentation. I will spare you that. For your benefit as well as everybody, for the recording's benefit as well. The program is designed to be an internationally recognized high school diploma specifically for families that are internationally mobile. So that if a family moves here from a foreign country, from a land outside of the United States, the child who earns an IB diploma would be able to seek access to a university back at home. The program is run in 142 different countries. So if a family comes here from France, for example, and we have a lot of families who have come here from France, the children in that family would earn, assuming they're successful in getting the diploma, would earn an entrance credential to universities in France, or an entrance credential in universities in whatever country that family were to go to next, which at that time they might not know. So that's the intent of the program. The vast majority of our students don't fit that profile. The vast majority of our students are our own Lower Merion School District students, or students that have moved here from somewhere else in the United States, intending to go to a university here in the United States, but they get the advantage of spending their 2 years of the diploma program with other international families, experiencing a very challenging, rigorous, outstanding international education. And some of them have chosen to study in countries elsewhere, which they wouldn't have chosen to do otherwise. In terms of the actual structure of the program, it's a diploma program. So just like any other diploma program, students are required to study an IB curriculum across different disciplines. You can't get an IB education by studying just strictly maths and sciences at an advanced level. You have to study literature in your native language, world language, sciences, maths, social studies, et cetera, at an IB level in an IB curriculum. Those subjects are interdisciplinarily connected across the 2-year program. Most of the courses are 2-year classes. In addition to that, students engage in 2 other 2-year-long events. One is called Theory of Knowledge, which is a metacognitive study of what is knowledge, exactly how do we acquire it, how is knowledge different in one discipline versus another discipline. Students engage in CAS, which stands for Creativity, Action, and Service, which is a very action-oriented endeavor in which students provide community service over the course of 2 years. And students write an extended essay and original research of about 4,000 words. The priorities of IB within this entire context, developing a sense of international mindedness, interdisciplinary connections, a focus on the development of critical thinking skills. IB very much values mastery of content, but it's a step toward the more important goal of, well, what can you do intellectually with the content that you've learned? And along the way of doing that, lots of different skills are developed: research skills, writing skills, self-management skills, and the like. That's IB in a nutshell. One of the first areas of our success certainly has been our growth. You can see that there are some ups and downs in this, which is certainly to be expected, especially early on in a new program. What you see is the size of each graduating class, and in the shaded blue area is the combination of the junior and senior class during any given academic year. So you can see that we went from running a program of about 25, well, of exactly 25 students when we began, to right now running a program of 116 students. Clearly that growth is related to, in part, to redistricting, and also in part to just simply a growing interest in and enjoyment of the IB experience. Students who choose not to pursue the IB diploma are also welcome to enroll in our IB elective courses. The elective opportunities are economics, psychology, visual arts, and music, and all 4 of those classes are offered as a 1-year option or a 2-year option. So virtually any junior or senior in our school can choose to take 1 or more of these elective courses for 1 or 2 years. What you see on this slide is the enrollment of students who are not diploma students who have opted to take our elective courses. And as you can see, the popularity of those elective courses has been increasing substantially over the long term. It does look like we cut in half our non-IB participation in the elective courses in the current year, and that is true, and that's due to the addition of the advanced placement courses in economics and psychology. And last time I was here speaking with you guys, it was about the potential impact on IB for that. As per Dr. McGinley's commitment at the time, we are running 2 sections, and they're 2 nicely sized sections of psychology, and we're running a section of economics as well. So it has not negatively impacted at all our IB program. There are 41 students who have chosen to take AP psychology or economics. Had those options not been available, clearly those students were seeking to take an advanced course in psychology or economics, and they may very well have been within our pool of students. So if you consider that, our 2013 to 2014 enrollment in our non-IB enrollment in our IB elective courses would probably be in the mid-70s. What you see, by the way, as a point of reference in the 2 pictures is the top picture is our IB class of 2005, and the bottom picture is our IB class of 2013. So if anything represents the growth of the program, certainly the contrast of those 2 pictures. So the students experiencing an IB curriculum in general from 2012 to 13, and this year roughly 1/5 of our juniors and seniors are diploma program students. In addition to that, last year roughly 30% of our juniors and seniors were experiencing an IB curriculum either as diploma students or non-diploma students. This year that percentage obviously went down because of the addition of economics and psychology.
Can you go back to that slide for 1 second, please? I apologize. I wanted to draw attention to the 2013 percentage of 25.7, and I have to retract a previous data point that I gave you when we presented with Mr. Everslog around the percentage of students that were participating, juniors and seniors. We gave you a number of 32.7%. That number was incorrect, and we apologize for that. So the correct number is represented on that slide of 25.7% of juniors and seniors who are experiencing an IB curriculum.
Thank you very much. Another area of our success is the rate at which our students are earning the IB diploma. The IB experience is a phenomenal experience whether or not a student actually earns the diploma. And most of our students don't really need the diploma per se because they're not planning to study at a university outside of the United States. That said, it's after 2 years of hard work, it's really nice to get that diploma. And our diploma rate is consistently above the worldwide average and always above the US average for as long as the US average has been reported by IB, and that they stopped reporting that data in 2008. A little bit of information about our admission policies first before talking about these data specifically. We do have an application process. It's not designed to be exclusive in any way whatsoever. There are IB schools that run very elite programs where the only IB students are the absolute cream of the crop and you're guaranteed a 100% diploma rate. That is not the philosophy of our program at all. Our philosophy has always been to cast as wide a net as possible, encourage students to take a stretch that they might not have considered taking otherwise, put supports in place to support their academic success, and work with those students and work with those families. As an educator, I am perfectly willing to sacrifice data, recognizing that there may be students who get a phenomenal education and stretch themselves to a point that they might not have chosen to stretch themselves otherwise, even if they don't actually earn the diploma. And as an educator, I am comfortable with that. That said, our numbers are fantastic. What you see on this slide, the first row across is the number of students who earned the diploma versus the number of students who attempted to earn it. The next row is the percentage of our school district students who earned the diploma. And the next row is the worldwide percentage, which hovers around 80% usually, of students throughout the world in 142 different countries who succeeded in earning the diploma. And as you can see, with the exception of the year 2006, where we were below the worldwide average, every other year we're at or above, and often substantially above the worldwide average. And that, I think, is something that we can be very proud of, because again, that's within the context of casting a wide net in our admission policy. Some additional data, and this reflects information that IB no longer publishes after 2008. So this is a little bit dated at the moment, obviously, but it does give some interesting information. The first row is the percentage of our school district students who have earned the diploma, same as the information on the previous slide, versus the number of the percentage of IB students specifically in the United States that have earned the diploma. Versus specifically the number of IB students, or the percentage of IB students in the state of Pennsylvania that have earned the diploma, and our numbers are consistently higher than both of those figures. The next two rows show the number of IB diplomas conferred within the state of Pennsylvania versus the number of IB schools in the state, and finally the percentage of diplomas conferred by our school district. And again, that data is no longer available beyond 2008. Another area of our success that's quantifiable is our college admissions data. Our students consistently go to excellent schools. This is where the students from last year, the class of 2013, are currently attending. I'm always very careful when I talk about college admission, because I certainly don't want to say that these students wouldn't have gone to outstanding schools had they not pursued IB. That's not the case at all. They're absolutely outstanding students. Had they chosen a different path other than IB, they would have gone on to fantastic schools anyway. So that's not my intent. But the reality is that it is the IB program that did prepare our students for success in these schools. And I say success optimistically. These are students who just entered their freshman year. But I'm an optimist. And historically speaking, our students have achieved success in undergraduate studies, and many of them now are PhDs as well. And clearly this also shows the wide range of schools that respect IB in the college admissions process. Another area of our success is going back to the idea of casting as wide a net as possible. We do have students with special needs who participate in our program. We do have students who have 504s and IEPs. We provide the accommodations as prescribed by those documents. IB does provide testing accommodations, and I have never been turned down for accommodations that I have requested. Typically, their use of a laptop for formal examinations, and also extended time. The one difference is IB tends to default to 25% extended time, and we tend to give 50% extended time. So that's a difference that I do tell students and their families as they're coming into the program. But we do work as a team to... That's okay. We do work as a team to support the success of our students, including parents, teachers, counselors, the special ed department, and including our music department. That's okay. No worries at all.
That was intermission.
It's probably my cue to speed it up a bit. The pictures that you see there, by the way, are from our very first IB reunion, the class of back in 2008 in Yangming. Another area, and I hesitate to say success here because there's certainly work to be done, but an area of our focus where we have had some success is in attempting to close the achievement gap. We have, over the length of our program, tried specifically to attract students who are usually not as well represented in higher level classes, to bring them into our program and to encourage them to pursue the diploma. We've had some success. We've not had as much success as we would like to have. Probably about 3 years ago, I began a much more data-driven process in identifying students, looking at DRP scores, looking at PSSA scores, soon to be looking at Keystone scores now that they're becoming available, looking at other key indicators, looking at grades, having conversations with specific teachers, having conversations with counselors, looking at students who are likely students who should be considering the diploma program, and having conversations with those students and having conversations with those parents. And certainly those students who choose not to go into the diploma program know that another viable option within the IB world is to look at our IB electives. We've had some success, not as much success as I would like to have. To be perfectly honest, a gatekeeping course tends to be completion of Algebra 2 prior to coming into the program, because Algebra 2 forms the foundation of mathematical knowledge in the 3 IB classes. I am very happy that the Lower Merion School District has realigned the math curriculum so that Algebra 2 now falls squarely on the plate of the majority of our sophomores' schedule as opposed to our juniors' schedule, opening opportunities to a much wider array of students. In the past, when I would look at Power School to look at the number of minority students who are in Algebra 2 as sophomores at either the college prep or the honors level, it would only be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students maybe, which obviously creates a very narrow pool of students who should be considering the diploma program. I'm very happy to say that this year there are 22 African American students taking Algebra 2 as sophomores, 6 taking it at the college, at the honors level. So I am optimistic that this time next year I'll be able to share higher numbers with you. Here is the enrollment of our African American students, and I'm going to backtrack and say specifically black students because one student was not American in any way at all, 100% from Africa. But our history of enrollment in the diploma program, you can see that right now in our pipeline in our current juniors and seniors, we have more than we've had put together in previous years. The success of those students in earning the diploma, one of our past students has earned the diploma, and she happened to be one of our co-valedictorians from last year. And again, I struggle with saying that this is an area of success because clearly it's an opportunity for further growth. But I do think that we've made some success in approaching students. Enrollment of African American students in our elective courses has also been increasing, with a notable exception of this year, increasing over the years as well. There are 3 African American students who are enrolled in the AP Economics and AP Psychology classes, which is great data for those 2 classes, and one would assume that they may have very well been enrolled in our IB, Econ, and Psychology classes if the AP option were not there. Another area of our success is our full embracement of what IB calls its mother tongue entitlement. IB schools are like, and I always use this analogy, and I know that it's wrong, but I'm going to use it anyway. We're like the Statue of Liberty with open arms, except that the Statue of Liberty doesn't have open arms. But we accept, we welcome, we comfort, we welcome into our community families from all over the world, and these families don't necessarily speak English, and often they don't, and often English is a language that the students are in the process of acquiring. IB requires that students study a world language or study their native language, a literature course in their native language, which we provide through what IB calls a self-taught option, where students are studying the literature of their native language on an independent study basis. And you can see the wide array of languages that we offer in that mechanism. IB students also, if they're completely bilingual, have the opportunity of studying English as well as the literature of their second language, and they earn IB's bilingual diploma, and we have conferred 33 IB bilingual diplomas over the course of our program. Moving into more affective domains, this here is a summary of IB's philosophy about what education is all about. Its approaches to teaching, its approaches to learning, and you can see that it's very consistent with Lower Merion School District's philosophy. This is nothing new for IB, but recently IB did put together all of this philosophy and the research that supports it in a specific document that's called Approaches to Teaching and Learning in the Diploma Program, abbreviated ATL because IB loves all of its initials. IB has also invited schools to participate in a pilot, in that the pilot schools can respond to this document, provide input in the finalization of the document that will then be released to the wider school, IB school community in 142 countries, and have invited pilot schools to participate in specific ATL initiatives within their schools. And I'm happy to say that we are one of those pilot schools. Also, with more affective responses, I asked teachers for some input on how IB has affected their practice, how IB has affected what they do in their curriculum. And here are some pieces of feedback. And what strikes me is Mr. Joseph's response about how interconnected everything is, which is very consistent with IB philosophy. How Shannon Davis's response, who's our world language teacher, talks about that mindset of international mindedness as being so much a part of what IB is all about. And in terms of preparation for college level work, what Justin Occhio-Grosso's comments specifically relating to the higher level math class reflect. Also dealing with affective successes, our CAS component, the creativity, action, and service component, has sparked many opportunities for the wider school community to participate in artistic events. We have open mics, we have poetry readings, we have little pieces of drama that are prepared by IB students. We have fundraisers that are designed to benefit international organizations. So there's that idea of making our student body more conscious of issues that face the world. One of these pictures is Sarah Weiser, one of our alumni from last year, putting together a mural that's currently beautifying part of our music department wing. Some of the other pictures that you see there, one of the activities in our overnight junior experience at Fellowship Farm. You see 4 Krummenachers, 3 alumni, and 1 current student. And you also see Nick in the bottom right picture, Nick, the IB class of 2006. Nick was still is British. Moved here from Germany the year that didn't change. IB can do a lot, but it doesn't change your nationality. Nick's family moved here the summer before his junior year from Germany, British family moving from Germany. Ani, Armenian family that's been in our community for quite a while, from the class of 2005. Talk about community building in a very literal way. That is Mia, their baby. Mia will become an older sister fairly soon. So certainly it's our IB connection that has united this couple. I sound almost as if I'm conducting a ceremony. I'm not intending to do that, but has brought this couple together in literally building community. So in terms of the future of our program, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. I can't necessarily predict future growth, but given the projections of future growth in the district, it's probably not a stretch to think that we're going to continue to grow. So questions become, well, what do we do with that growth? And certainly we will have enough students to be able to support the addition of elective courses within our offerings, in addition to economic psychology, visual arts, and music. Whether we choose to go in that direction or not is obviously a topic of future discussion. There are multiple courses that IB offers that I think would be great fits for our student body and for our community. I did mention to Wagner previously that theater might be an option, because this is a community that very strongly embraces theater, and we have an incredibly talented faculty and student body. A course that, quite honestly, we don't have a choice to add is a course called French A Literature, and that's because that self-taught option I alluded to earlier, IB says that you can have 5 students maximum studying a self-taught language in any given year. And we have more than 5 French-speaking students doing French A. So I'll come to you with a proposal to add it, but quite honestly, we have to. It's either that or withdraw from IB. So we'll be having that conversation fairly soon. In terms of what the, yes?
Will that be an elective, or will that be a?
It'll be a group 1 offering for students who are native speakers of French, only native speakers of French. And we can talk about that in more detail. In terms of whether or not there's appetite in the district for looking at further development of international education in the district, the IB organization does offer other opportunities. The diploma program began in 1968. And currently there, as I had said before, there are 2,453 diploma programs in the world, exactly 800 in the United States. In 1994, IB basically said, well, why don't we create a feeder program and allow that program to exist internationally and to develop the same international mindset and focuses on critical thinking skills as a feeder program to the diploma program. And the middle years program, MYP, was born in 1994. IB then said, well, why don't we, and middle years program, by the way, tends to be a 5th through 10th grade program. IB then said, well, why don't we get kids a little bit earlier and prepare students for the middle years program? And the primary years program was born in 1997. So if there is appetite for looking at continuation of the IB continuum of education, of international education, I certainly don't claim to be an expert in any of it. I claim to know something about all of it. I've done some research in the MYP, and I'm certainly willing to be part of that exploration if that's the direction that the district chooses to go in. The pictures you see here are from our most recent reunion in December of 2012, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. It's always exciting to hear about what's going on with the IB program, and you speak to it in ways that get me interested even more. I want to open up the floor to questions from the committee first, and then I'll ask some questions as well. Anybody?
Thank you for the presentation. It was
My
really
pleasure.
fantastic. In terms of the issues around growth, I'm just curious around, are there concerns that we will have the staffing we need in order to be able to accommodate what looks like likely growth?
Excellent question. The district, the board, our administration at both the district level and the building level have been extremely supportive of IB and of its growth throughout the entire process. The support that this board has shown to the program itself, and quite honestly to its coordinator, is greatly appreciated and is very well noted. There will be staffing considerations, certainly. To some extent, that'll be offset, because if a student is in IB History of the Americas as a junior, that student would have been in U.S. history otherwise. Okay. So there will be staffing implications in that there are IB courses that IB students take that students outside of IB wouldn't be taking. Mm-hmm. So certainly there are staffing implications there. But in many of the situations, if an IB student is in one of our 3 IB math classes as a junior, well, that student would have been in math analysis trig honors elsewhere. The growth that's projected within the district, and certainly the growth that's projected at Harriton, and I know that there are discussions about what to do with that, but if those numbers bear fruit in the future, there will be staffing implications, period. And IB will certainly be part of that. But the support that the district has given at all levels has contributed substantially to our success in the program, and that includes in staffing.
Great, thank you.
Tom, this is not in the form of a question. Mm-hmm. I just want to say thank you for being inclusive, because one of the challenges of the district is closing the achievement gap, and with the excitement that you bring and the overall foresight. I knew a little bit about IB, but just listening to you in the presentation, like Robin, it makes me, want to know more, want to do more, and make our young people understand exactly the advantages of being a part of this program. So I just thank you for being foresighted.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Other questions? Suba?
Thank you for the presentation.
My pleasure.
I wrote down but missed what EE stands for.
Oh, certainly. And IB loves its acronyms. IB is the extended essay.
Oh, right.
It's in
4,000 words.
Exactly, which you're probably intimately familiar with,
or
will be soon.
I will be.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The extended essay is a 4,000-word essay in original research. It's not the traditional or stereotypical American-style research paper where students identify a topic and write a paper that is essentially a warehouse of background information based on the background reading that the student has done. IB's expectation is that you do that background reading, and within the context of that background reading, you present your own conclusions, identifying or using those critical thinking skills involved in analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of sources and whatnot.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Certainly.
Diane, any questions? I wanted to go back to Ms. Pollard's point, Mr. O'Brien, around closing the achievement gap, and again applaud the IB program for tackling, you know, a difficult issue for all districts across the country. You spoke about supports for students who don't come from your traditional pool. Could you talk about what that looks like for students who do enter IB, and how their experience can be as fulfilling as those students who come from a traditional background?
Absolutely. There are multiple answers to that. Certainly contact with families, inviting families to come in and have personal conversations, as well as conversations by electronic means or over the phone. Counseling with students, involving our counseling staff, working with teachers who have established powerful relationships with students, even if they're not necessarily the students' current teachers, because those relationships are already there. Our district has had a heavy focus recently in looking at formative assessment and the role of formative assessment in assessing students, and certainly recognizing that not all students, we do believe, and as a district we believe that all students can learn. We also know that not all students learn at the same rate as others. So looking at formative assessment and using it more proactively in identifying where students are struggling and being able to target that remediation more effectively is something that we've been focusing on as well.
Great. All those are great ideas. So it sounds to me like there have been some successes in terms of making sure students are transitioned
Yes.
effectively into
Yes.
the program and feel like they belong there. Because
Yes.
I think it's, you know, it's not just the academic piece, but also the social connection in terms of feeling like I belong here.
One of the, and the year is young, but one of the points of pride I feel in this year so far, we had our very first overnight experience, trying to jumpstart that sense of community building, because it doesn't necessarily happen as organically with 63 kids as
That's
it would
right.
with 12 or 15 or whatever. And we went to Fellowship Farm, and I don't know if you're familiar. I know you're familiar with Fellowship Farm. They do amazing work in team building, leadership training, community building kinds of activities. And unbeknownst to me, when we arrived, we found that our 4 team leaders, our trainers from IB, were 4 African Americans. And they were powerful, influential figures over the course of our 2 days. And that was an incredible motivating factor and a way of fostering inclusiveness for the 3 African Americans who participated in that overnight experience. So yes, fostering inclusiveness, not fostering, achieving inclusiveness is certainly one of our goals.
Thank you. And could you speak just a little bit to what the middle years program might look like based on your research and experience?
It's a program that embraces all of the philosophy of what the diploma program embraces. So as far as philosophy is concerned, it would be a perfect match. It would be consistent with our diploma program. Students from a philosophical perspective in terms of their approaches to teaching and approaches to learning, that ATL document is for primary years, middle years, and diploma program years. For approaches to teaching and learning would be consistent. So philosophically speaking, the experience would provide a seamless transition from middle years program to the diploma program for our students. More mechanically, IB does expect that there are certain disciplines that are taught within an IB curriculum with IB standards over the course of the 5-year program from 5th through 10th grades. So IB students, middle years program, MYP students are expected to take, for example, English, math, etc. And our students do that already. There are some changes that would be necessary. We don't offer, for example, a technology course that's taught every year during that 5-year stretch of time. So that would be something that we'd have to look at. So we would definitely need to look at curriculum and how it aligns and what might be adjusted. So that's one challenge that we would face. Not obstacle, but certainly a challenge that we would have to rise to the occasion of. Another challenge would be, well, all right, well, where do you put this thing? Our diploma, the middle years program would cap out in 9th and 10th grades, and one would assume at Harriton, since the diploma program is housed at Harriton, but not all diploma program students come from Welsh Valley. So it certainly makes sense that the MYP would be housed at Welsh Valley, but there are Bala-Cynwyd students who come to Harriton specifically for IB and do participate in IB. Is that a large portion of our program? No, but they're certainly not students that I would want to see excluded. And if we run an MYP at Welsh Valley, that does create challenges, philosophical challenges in terms of inclusion, as well as mechanical challenges, because then if a Bala Cynwyd graduate were to come to Harriton to participate in IB, well, can that student participate in the final 2 years of an MYP? I quite honestly have no
I see.
idea. That student certainly would be able to continue with the diploma program studies.
There,
But
there
we're-
are a whole lot of other issues
Okay.
that would be connected to that discussion. I mean, I appreciate the overview, but and Dr. Marseille has also looked at that issue, and we've had some internal discussions. But setting up a program that kind of takes a group of kids and gives them a different model in middle school would be philosophically very different than everything we're doing right now.
Okay.
That's very true.
Okay.
That is very true.
Much
And-
more so than the interdisciplinary programs that we already run at the middle school level?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a program that, because of the need to add courses that wouldn't be offered otherwise, and without getting too wonky about the ins and outs of MYP, there's a set of lenses through which IB requires all content to be taught. For example, one of those lenses is human ingenuity, and you would teach content through the lens of human ingenuity and how that creates interdisciplinary links, which philosophically is fascinating. But if that's the direction in which education will occur in one building, it would be
Sure.
a difference, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to other small group conversations around
Absolutely.
what that could possibly look like, logistics all considered. So,
I have
thank
just 2 points. One is your discussion of the Statue of Liberty. I've met the people who have come from other places. They're not tired or poor. They're not
Very
huddled.
true.
So it's nice to have students from around the world. When we add a course like French literature, this is an example of something that costs us money, because
it
when
absolutely
we have
does.
5 kids in a class, the class still costs about $25,000 to run. So that's a teacher's time to teach French literature. So if there are 10 kids in the room or 12, it reduces the per pupil costs. So where the IB numbers have grown, we're getting a better bang for the buck now than we were when my first year here, I observed an art class. There were 3 kids in the art class for the whole year. So we're making better use of this investment, but it is a great expense. My question to you, Tom, is about French. Is there another language that's coming up?
We've had a lot of Swedish families move in recently for no known reason whatsoever. The French families, that's very understandable. We have the French International School in our backyard. I go to the French International School every year and do a presentation for them. Now, not everybody who attends the French International School is a member of a family that lives within our school district,
Right.
but a decent amount of them are. So they've sort of created a pipeline into our program, which explains a lot of our growth in French. Our juniors are about 9 or 10 native French speakers, which is fantastic, but it does create this complexity of what can no longer be a self-taught literature class. But that class also is limited strictly to native speakers of the language, which creates the complexity that Diane, you were just alluding to, like whether it will be available to other students.
Yeah.
It is a course that's designed strictly for native speakers.
And when we get to languages other than the languages that we offer, like Spanish or French, then we also get into certification issues and other kinds of qualifications.
In the case of the French, we do have.
Yeah, I know we're fine
Right.
with French.
Yeah, we don't have, unless you happen to know somebody who could teach a 2-year course in Swedish literature. There is the potential of an issue on the horizon.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate our Swedish population, and I'm just saying Swedish as an example.
Right.
But I don't anticipate our Swedish population growing to the extent that our French population has grown. And fortunately, we do have French certified teachers.
Right.
Now, granted, these students are not going to be studying French as a foreign language, which is what the French certificate kind of implies. I mean,
Right.
our French teachers teach French to English speakers. But nonetheless, they do have French certifications, and that's fortunate for us.
Is there no way the IB program in Geneva would issue some sort of waiver for that particular piece of the?
I can certainly find out. I can tell you now that the response will be no, because I would
I know
imagine
they're very strict.
they are.
No, I know that they're not. But I'm thinking this issue is going to start coming up I think not only, in the American schools in particular, I mean, the European schools, those students, I think, frequently are multilingual.
Sure.
But in the American schools, we generally aren't. So this may, I don't know if you have contacts with other American schools that offer the diploma program, that maybe you go in, 3 schools go together and ask for the waiver at the same time or something. I don't
Right.
know.
And it's certainly something that I can investigate. IB argues that you have to draw the line somewhere, and there is an expectation that classes are taught classes, and this is the only mechanism in which students are able to do a self-taught program. But IB says you got to draw the line somewhere, and we've drawn the line at 5. And if you want to make the argument that the line should be drawn somewhere else, you can make that argument. But historically speaking, it's been 5. I would love to see that line a little bit higher for lots of really good reasons, but that is where they do draw the line.
And is this different than taking, I'm just thinking, we have students who are non-native. I can think of one student in particular, that's why the question's coming up. It's a non-native Chinese speaker, but took Chinese as well as English at the HL level. And is that different than, now he did the Chinese
It's self-taught.
self-taught,
Right. But that was,
but he was non-native. And I don't know, did Michael get a bilingual?
but brought up in a bilingual environment.
Okay, so, but
And it needs to be a student.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if there's a way that we can make that class bigger with French-speaking students. I can think of at least one other student who grew up in the U.S.,
Sure,
lived in a bilingual
But
house.
students who grow up in a bilingual environment certainly would be able to take that class as well. But most of those students are already in our program and probably would already be within the count of students who would be doing the self-taught option. The other complexity is the advantage on the students' side of a self-taught option is it doesn't take up a slice in their schedule. I mean, it's an open period. And once you require students to meet in a taught class, the number might go down, which oddly could put us below the 5 standard. For that reason, the proposal that we've looked at, and there's a mechanism in the agreement that provides for online instruction. And I'm thinking that one of the best ways, one of the most affordable ways for the district, and one of the ways that would keep it off of the official schedule of a student is to offer this course in an online environment. And that's kind of where the discussion, the proposal isn't prepared yet, but that's kind of where the discussions are going now.
An online option would be something IB would approve of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And self-taught, what is the student just with the book and they're learning the language, or are they connected with the instructor? What does that look like?
There isn't necessarily an instructor. I mean,
Okay.
fortunately, we do have French and Spanish speakers on our staff. In some cases, we have Arabic speakers or whatever, who we have an Arabic speaker, for example, who can give some support. But the students are pretty much, I run it from a mechanical perspective. I take them through the process. I explain to them how they need to put together a syllabus meeting IB's expectations. And there are approved lists of authors for every genre in every language, approved lists of titles, and the students have to put together a syllabus that I then review to make sure is consistent with IB's expectations. I talk about what the assessment expectations are. There's an oral exam that I run and record and submit to IB. I don't understand any of it. I just sit there and smile. The French I can kind of understand. The Spanish I can understand. It's my certification. But the Hebrew I cannot understand. The Arabic I cannot understand, etc. And the Swedish I'm sure I will not understand either. But I take them through the assessment components and I make sure that they understand the expectations. We meet and I keep them on target with their reading expectations. But there is a strong recommendation that they work with, ideally, a family member who has experience in literary analysis and writing about literature.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Anything else? All right, Dr.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Appreciate it. Thank
My
you very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
We're going to transition back to Dr. Doria, who's going to provide us a little update on the after-school program. Okay. Do you mind if I borrow that, Mr. Bryan? I'll get it right now.
Good morning. So I'm jumping into the after-school program year 2, and I want to applaud the board and the district for beginning this last year, because it really was effective for many students, and the team for their outstanding work in the preparation and the continuation for this year. So it's well planned out. Thanks. So just a quick review from last year of what the program looked like, and it's very similar this year with just really one change. We target students who are score basic or below basic and invite those students to attend the program, which is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Some students are reading only, and they get reading on both days. Some are math, obviously only, and some split. And if they split last year, they had 2.5 hours of reading and a half hour of math instruction for that. The program is the Level Literacy Intervention Reading Program and the PSSA Support Coach and the Investigations Differentiation and Intervention Guide and the Support Coach. And this year, we'll see it on a later slide, they're just adding one more piece, which is Dreambox in math. So it was 35 sessions, and the program was held here at the district office. Just a quick review of the results. So although many students were invited, and the team can talk to that in more detail with questions and answers, 30 students completed the program in reading and 17 in math. And of that, we had success in that 14 students increased their PSSA proficiency level in reading, with 4 making multiple levels of movement. And in math, 7 increased their PSSA proficiency level, with 1 making multiple movement. And I want to share at the end as well, this kind of the students received the foresight assessment to predict how they would do on the PSSA, and we're going to talk about the connection between that at the end, and it's, I think, about 50% or 48%. And then for the 5th grade, just to kind of similar findings, that 11 students increased PSSA, with 1 making multiple level movements, and 5 in math, with 2 making multiple level movements. Thanks. So again, this year the program is similar to last year, with the only change being the Dreambox, which is the new math component for this year. So far, our numbers are changing every day, with students accepting and connecting with parents. So we didn't put the numbers down, and we can do questions and answers with that if we need to. But 98 students are invited to attend, and again, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, with 32 sessions. And for the data collection, and when I spoke to that foresight a little bit, the students are given this foresight assessment pre and post, or closer to the end, to predict their success on the PSSA, and 79% in reading. Was it? Success or the same, or going up. Yeah. Oh, that's got to mean to pull you out on that, but I believe it was 79% where students were, they predicted a level and the students were on that level, or they scored higher than that in reading. And in math is 68, I think, was the same. Oh, and then the key piece too with this is formative assessments are used throughout on a daily and weekly basis to check for understanding and to modify the teaching and learning as we go. Grab you that last one, would you? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's just a snapshot of where we are, and I know we have some specific number changes if you have questions or answers.
Thank you, Dr. Dory. Excited to know that the program is running again, and that the district has been able to both staff it as well as fund it. I just had a programmatic question. The students are getting, so the students who need both math and reading support, I'm just curious about the decision around 2.5 hours of reading and a half hour of math. How do we decide
Sure,
that?
I wasn't here last year, so.
This year, you're going to have one session of reading and one session.
Are you on the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
This year, we have decided to give those students one full session of math and one full session of reading.
Okay, so
This year.
either the Tuesday or Thursday will
Yes.
be either or subject.
Yeah, and last year we felt that the students who were struggling in math and reading, it was really based on a reading problem.
Okay.
So we felt that giving them the majority of the time on reading would help them ultimately in their math skills with problem solving and interpreting word problems.
Okay.
But this year, we're going to try one day of reading on Tuesday and one session on Thursday for math.
And do we have a sense of how many students that have accepted so far, or ballpark? As we start next week?
Yes, we have 50 students who definitely will be attending. 28 we're awaiting responses from those
Okay.
families. We left messages, and we will touch back with them today or tomorrow. 15 definite no's,
Okay.
and 5 who are unsure. So
Any reason for the no's? Or just no?
conflicts with after-school activities,
Sure.
for the most part.
Okay.
One of the things that I had heard from a couple of the parents were
And the
it's
long-
it's
and
a
long-
very
and the
long
length.
day.
And
Yes.
the length, right.
And they had done the program last year, and some of the children said that it just was a very difficult day for them.
Okay.
To continue until 6 or 6:30 at night.
That was another issue.
That was
Okay.
one of the issues I had.
And it is a long, it is a very
It is a
long
very
day.
long day. It's a work day.
By the time they get here, right.
Yeah.
They get here and they do get re-energized and the way they structure the program, you know, the 3 people right here who
Yes.
are hovering and making sure that everybody's motivated and moving, and they do kind of reawaken, but it is a very long day. And in the dead of winter,
Yeah.
it's tough.
I'm wondering any feedback regarding homework challenges, because obviously if students aren't getting home until, nearly 6 o'clock, I'm just curious if that's come up for families in terms of just the logistical dilemma.
I think we ironed that out pretty early on in the program last year. We met with the teachers
Okay.
of those students, and I made sure they weren't getting additional work on top of what they were experiencing from 4:30 to 6 o'clock every day.
Okay.
So that we ironed that out pretty early on.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and so same process for this year.
Yes.
Thank you. Please.
Of the 11 fourth and 7 fifth grade students who got support in both math and reading, do you have any idea how many of those showed improvement in proficiency levels on the PSSA? I'm just curious whether we're spraying them too thin.
I don't have a
We
handout.
don't have our hand.
Can we have a handout?
The presentation.
It just says, that-
But in the fourth grade, the students who had,
It was specifically about the reading and math kids who
yeah,
were
the
reading
kids who
and
are,
math.
yeah,
What do you know about their level of growth or improvement?
well, in math, the students who increased their PSSA proficiency level, 5 out of the 7 were the math-only students. I know that. They got math both days. So, yeah, so there were 2 students. And remember, they only had math for a half hour each week. For 5th grade, the 5 students who increased their proficiency, it was on 2 students, I believe, had math both days. 3 students had it for the half hour. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, the other thing we had to adjust for a couple of my students who were on the spectrum was that when they had math and reading at the same time, the transition was too
Yes,
difficult
it
for
was,
them. It was too long of a day. You know, the difficulty that they had with transitions anyway was really hard. So I had spoken to the parents about just doing the reading program. The one little boy did improve in level. And Mom has now asked that we put the math back. I had taken the math program away and focused on the reading, just so that we didn't have the transition, because we were seeing some behaviors. He didn't want to move. Once he said, he just wanted to stay. So Mom has asked us this year to transition him to both programs, which I think if it's a different day, that will be the routine for him and he'll be okay. So we've really looked across the board of how to support all the kids, all levels, and all of their differences.
The problem with both days, having one each day though, is if the student could only attend Tuesday or Thursday.
And so students are still able to attend if they can only come
Yes,
the one day?
yes.
So I know last year you did the data presentation, which was very helpful. I know the PSSA cut scores are always a little tricky to kind of see where students are. So when I hear about movement, it's interesting to me to see where exactly on that scale the students are. So if we could maybe add another column that would, remind us of what the scores are and where, where groups of students or percentages of students, if I recall the presentation from last year, fall in terms of their PSSA growth. It would be helpful just to, so that we can start to really track that growth, particularly as they're moving on to middle school.
Okay. Right. We do have a spreadsheet actually that tracks growth from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade PSSA and the scale score and their proficiency level. And until we get, I guess, the PVAS data, Brian, you may want to speak to that.
We also run a report on
Brian, your microphone, please.
We do run a report in our performance tracker system, which is a level movement report. So we can see test for students within that cohort that took the 3rd grade PSSA, that actually took the 4th grade PSSA, and we could find the group of students that are in the after-school program and put them into a bucket so that we can keep running the same data on those particular students in that program, which shows us the level movement from one test to the next. Which is what the supervisors have done to come up with these particular numbers.
Did anyone go backwards?
I had 2 students in reading in grade 4 that didn't make progress. And I had,
Didn't make progress or yeah.
that it was downward. It was downward movement. I did.
Downward movement within the category, like they performed in the
Within the
basic range,
category, right.
and they stayed, but they dropped.
Right.
Okay. No, they didn't drop to below basic.
No, they
they
dropped
stayed
in.
in the
And it's
area.
very
Got it.
difficult to look at scores because the cut scores for 4th and 5th, the scale score is very different. Until we could get onto PBOS, which was supposed to be later this month, and really see where the students were predicted and where they really achieved, then we have a better picture. Right now, all we could report to you is who jumped a category, who stayed within their category, and I could tell you some students stayed within the category and
they
got more scale score points. But what does that really mean? Because the scale score changes from 4th to 5th grade. So we only reported to you the upward movement of levels, proficiency levels.
And of those 2 students, the one student is now taking the PASA as opposed to the PSSA. And another factor that we've talked about a lot is the PSSA-M that they took away, that the state took away from us, that the children with special needs were able to take and actually made proficiency are now dropping at basic because they've taken those accommodations away.
And remind me of the PASA, give just a little more background.
The PASA is a test that's individual for each one of the students. It's a videotaped test that's on their level. It's for 1% of the population who aren't able to take the PSSA. They're below grade level and they have pretty significant needs.
Okay, so it would be a very special case where
It
we
is.
could offer something like that for students.
The modified was very successful for students because rather than read all 3 pages of reading and then answer the questions, it was chunked. So they would give them maybe 3 paragraphs and give them the questions that went with those 3 paragraphs. This past year, 2013, was the very first time that students, that opportunity for students was taken away, and that accounted for some of the differences because now they're faced with the entire test in front of them and they will not be given that anymore.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just one comment. I would just like to acknowledge the hard work of the three individuals who are here in front of you today, because they were here every single session, all three of them. They were not asked to be here for all three of them every session. They were asked to certainly supervise the program, but their commitment was so intense that they were here every night, and it was a whole lot of work. And they worked on the recruiting end at the beginning when nobody even knew what we were talking about, and they worked out all the logistical things and the building, and we ended up with having to use spaces that we didn't anticipate using. So there were a whole lot of logistics that you went through last year that you don't have to go through this year. But I just want to commend you for your dedication to the kids and to the program.
Thank you.
It's very much appreciated.
I echo that. Dr. Marseille?
Thank you. I want to be aware that we have one last agenda item, which is our performance results from 2012-13 PSSAs. We have 24 minutes to go through that process, so I just want to put out there that we might not have enough time to go through the whole entire slide, but I will move very efficiently.
Just a process question, because I have somewhere that I have to go in a few minutes.
Sure.
Do you anticipate summarizing this report at the Education Committee meeting? Is that where we're going next, or is that not part of the plan?
It's part of your plan, so it is part of my plan.
And can we hold time for the next curriculum meeting I mean, obviously, we want to spend time on the data.
Sure.
And we don't want to, we don't want the drive-by.
It'll probably take 15 to 20 minutes to go through the entire presentation, and if there's questions, I know we're going to run over, so I just wanted to defer to, do we begin the conversation and then stop it and then revisit where we left off, but that's next month, or we can pick up at, to some extent, a summary statement at the next board meeting, which we will also talk about the school performance profile.
Okay.
As well. So,
but we have the option of also using the education meeting. Dr. McGinley, do we have some time there?
We had planned to do the school performance profile.
Okay.
And so that is a data-driven conversation. Here at the curriculum committee, we have usually much more detailed level of discussion. But I don't know what, there has to be some discussion of these scores at that evening meeting.
Okay.
How far we go, I'm really not sure. I mean, an option might be, is there a piece of this to do right now and stop? I mean,
your first option sounds like one that's workable, and you certainly can use your judgment on when we should stop, and at least leave a few moments for questions. And we have some folks from the community that are here that I want to make sure we set some time.
Can I just make a suggestion that you explain what each set of graphs mean, not go through each graph, and then we can sort of process it and then have questions at the
Okay.
I mean, for me, that might be the better way. I don't know how other people think.
I'm fine with that.
no, I can do that.
And then to save some time, or to kind of push this forward for our next curriculum meeting, so then that way we're having a conversation that extends.
That's great. Okay. I'll work with that. This slide is going, what we want to try to show you is that there are multiple data points that we wanted to share with you. For the sake of time, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the proficiency levels of all students. And that looks, it's a 5-year look at all students and subjects, and students with IEPs, and students who are on free and reduced lunch. The next component is proficiency levels by school. And that will give you a 6-year look at the PSSA scores for math and reading for elementary, middle, and high school. The proficiency levels by student groups, that's really data points that take a look at groups of students' performance at grade levels. So we're going to take a look at how were 5th graders in 2007-8 perform compared to 5th graders in 2012-13, and we looked at it is not a cohort, it's just a group. The next is a cohort analysis, where we will take a group of students traveling from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and highlighting their performance. And we will also do that for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. The last part is the Achievement Gap cohort, which is a group of students traveling, and we're going to compare the performance of African American students and Caucasian students in math and reading. For the sake of time, we'll probably get to the proficiency levels of all schools and the proficiency levels by schools, and then we can stop and take questions from there, and then we'll continue our conversation at a later point. All right. So here, what I want to show you the next couple of slides, what you're going to see in the next 4 or 5 slides is that we saw some growth in the percentage of IEP students scoring proficient or advanced in the last 5 years. What we tried to do is give you some summary statements of what you're going to see in the next 4 or 5 slides. We saw a lot of growth at the high schools. We also saw growth in our students qualifying for free and reduced lunch, and we saw some significant, even though we did not do this particular analysis in terms of whether it's significant, but I dare to say that a 14% jump and a 19% jump is a very large increase. So let me tell you what you're looking at right now. What you're looking at is a 5-year trend of all students in all subjects who scored proficient or advanced in math and reading at the elementary level, math and reading at the middle, and math and reading at the high school over a 5-year period. The legend at the bottom, which we hope serves to be a better way of looking at the bar graph for you, but either way, you have 2 views in terms of how to look at that process. Each bar is all elementary students, all middle and all high school students. So there is no specific grade here as of yet. There's other the other data points will show that across the board. So what I wanted to highlight in this particular graph is shows the percentage of students and the growth that has occurred, and we saw that the high schools in both reading and math did show over the 5 years much larger growth than the elementary and the middle. The smaller green arrows showed the percentage increase or showed growth. Some were very minor growth. Nonetheless, there were increases, showed the 11 to 12, 12, 13 performance of elementary from 89.74 to 90.7, and the other data points as well. So over the course of the last 5 years, the high schools have seen some growth, the largest growth of the middle and elementary, and they showed some growth from 11-12 to 12-13. Here, you're going to take a look at a 5-year trend of IEP students who scored proficient or advanced. Same legend at the bottom that will take you through 07, 08, all the way through 12, 13. And you'll see that, unfortunately, our performance in the 12 or 13 school year did drop at the elementary and middle school from 11-12 to 12-13. But we did see increases in the performance of high school students who have an IEP. And I remind you, this is all students within both high schools. And I also want to caution that though we saw growth from in both math and reading, and though we will acknowledge the growth, we know that there is much work to be done with the performance of many of our IEP students on these particular type of standardized assessments. But I wanted to caution or highlight the analysis to say that in 11-12, students took the PSSAs. In 12 and 13, they took the Keystones. So I want to note that when you see that that jump from 49 to 55, 54 to 59, that we're not really comparing the same assessment because the year before they did take the PSSAs, and this year they took the Keystones, understanding that if you had the opportunity to go through the Keystone assessments, it is obviously a much more rigorous exam and much more concentrated in terms of content than the PSSAs. Here we wanted to give you a look at our students who are free and reduced lunch and the progress that we're making with that subgroup. However, we did not show growth in the elementary and middle years from 11-12 to 12-13. The high school did see growth in those students qualifying for free and reduced lunch, from 53 to 67 and 62 to 77, which are some really good jumps in terms of the performance of those students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. Elementary did have, or elementary reading had the largest 5-year growth. As you noted that they started at 53.85 and grew to 2012-13 to 68%. So our students at the elementary who are qualifying for free and reduced lunch did make the largest growth over a 5-year period. High school also showed some tremendous growth in math, from 47% in 08 compared to our percentage 67 in 12 and 13. So next, what you're going to see are some highlights for proficiency levels by schools. And what we're going to take you through is our last set of slides, and we'll open the floor for conversation. But what you're going to see is that specifically in some of other elementary schools as well, but you saw the big takeaway, Penn Win demonstrated growth in the number of students growing proficient or advanced in math during the last 6 years. The high school showed growth in the number of students scoring proficient or advanced in math and in reading, but we did not see, we saw a decrease in the middle schools in terms of the performance in the 12-13 school year versus 11-12. So this is what it looks like for 6-year performance by schools. And we have the elementary schools in first in terms of math, and you'll see that looking at 11-12 to 12-13 with those green arrows, you see growth from 11-12 to the 12-13 school year. But we noticed that Penn Win did have the largest increase over a five-year period. Here's the same graph, but we're looking at a 6-year at elementary reading. And those arrows indicate the schools that showed growth from 11-12 to 12-13, and Penn Win showing the largest percentage of growth over a 6-year period. Now we're going to transition to math and reading at the middle schools, where you'll see the scores for Ballard Kenwood and Welsh Valley. And as noted in the previous slide, I told you that you were going to anticipate prior to seeing this one that we did not see an increase in growth from the 11-12 to 12-13 school year, though we are performing in the 90s and 89% for the 12-13. It was not comparable to the performance levels of the previous year. Welch Valley, that large arrow indicates the largest growth from 07-08 to 12-13. Here you're looking at the high schools with the caveat that I mentioned earlier that in 11-12, 11th graders participated in the PSSAs, and in the 12-13 school year, they sat for the Keystone exams. So though you're seeing growth at Lower Merion, Harriton, and Lower Merion for reading and math, in 11-12, 12-13, there are two different assessments, and as I noted earlier, but you're seeing growth in those particular areas. Lower Merion High School did show the largest growth over a 6-year period from 07-08 to the 12-13 to 94.63% of their students scoring proficient or advanced in reading.
Math was 11, 12, 13, 12, 15, from 86 to 88.
Yes, it did. It did go up.
So it should not have a little bit.
Yes, it should have a green arrow, so that went up. Sorry, Harriton. So it should go up as well. And Lower Merion High School from 83% to 91.64% over the 5-year period. So I want to stop there to see if there's any questions about those data points, because we only have a couple minutes left, and I know there's audience members in the audience who might have some questions.
Thank you, Dr. Marseille. Are there questions from the committee on any of the data points? And again, this will be an extended conversation, so
Yes.
I want to let folks know that. Diane?
Yeah. So in all these charts, the little arrows at the end are year-over-year improvements or declines.
Yes, they are.
And then you talked about the difference between 07-08 and 12-13, but that's still just a year-over-year. It's just a big gap in between. And looking at the graphs, they would suggest whether there's a trend up or down, and I'm not seeing any trends. Am I misreading this, or it's kind of like it's up and down and up and down and up and down? In a couple of cases, it's up, but then down a little bit. Is there any way to take this data and I don't know, come up with an average of increase over time, or is there another way to evaluate this other than to recognize that they're all, for the most, with except for, let me rephrase this, that in terms of all students, the numbers are fairly high and stay fairly high within a couple of points. With some of the pullouts, it's a little rockier in terms of growth. And I mean, I'm not sure that other than information, I'm not seeing any trends. I'm not seeing anything that we can pull out of this data. So
For these particular data points, you won't see that. There is not a very specific trend with regards to data points. We are seeing single-digit increases across time. From year to year, there might be some changes. Like I said, the number of students, the most significant change you saw was the number of students performing proficient or advanced who are qualified for free and reduced lunch. And that was a large increase. And that's probably, if I want to talk about trend, for those 9 slides you just saw, probably the only area I would do that. We can show the slide in a very different way in terms of a line graph to show over time if it's more pleasing to the eye. But I can defer to Brian to see if there's any other way to look at that. But we didn't see significant trends in these slides. What you will see in the group analysis and the cohort analysis, you'll see trends in those particular slides. Those you'll see trends because we're traveling with students over the same group of students over time. But these preliminary slides, you will not see that
And I would just like to echo that, what Dr. Marseille said, you'll tend to see those trends more significant in the cohort analysis. Here we are just looking at grade level year over year, and that changes every year. And it's really hard to pinpoint, but it's a data point that school boards like to look at. How did the 7th grade perform this year compared to the 7th grade last year? But we'll see more of a significant trend when we look at the cohort analysis
And to me, that would be a much more meaningful number.
more meaningful.
Yeah.
Because there we're starting to track students over a number of years, 5 years, that have consistently taken the same sort of exam at the same rigor.
And one other real quick question.
Can I just say one more thing about this kind of, that we're bouncing around, but we're up near the top. So,
Right, that's what I said. I started that, yeah.
And so the reason why I just want to make a point is that these years, 9, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, are years of incredible growth for the school district. So we're adding large numbers of kids, particularly at the elementary level, elementary and middle school level. And so, maintaining a high performance is a struggle when you're adding that many more kids and that many more new teachers. And so I just want to kind of acknowledge that while it would be great if these were all, getting up to 96 or 97, they're not. But we're as good as we've ever been, and we are doing it at a time when we're welcoming, a dozen new teachers every year and indoctrinating them to the program and, adding all those kids across the district.
The other quick question is, with each of the pull-out pieces, the free and reduced lunch and IEPs, whatever, if we could get a sense of the number of students we're talking about. I mean, are we talking about 500 students or are we talking about 12? Because then you get much more variability with the fewer numbers.
Sure, we'll do that, absolutely.
Ms. Robinson?
Is for the free and reduced and the IEPs, are they taking the same exact test, the PSSA, the PSSA?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so they're not taking like the modified test versus the regular?
No, they
Okay.
removed the PSSA modified last year.
So if you're looking at 2007, 2008, they would have had the modified one?
Yes, they would have, yes.
Okay, so up to 2011, they had the modified one?
Yes, for those students who qualify for yes.
Okay, so that might account for some of the decrease, right?
That's another variable to
Okay.
take a look at.
Okay.
Yes.
I did have a real quick question. When we look at this data alongside the PVOS data and we talk about projected growth, and if I'm getting into a conversation we're going to have at future meetings, then stop me now. But obviously, that is when I see the numbers like Diane that are kind of up and down, and certainly at the top, but still up and down nonetheless. And we're, looking, we want up to the extent possible. What should I be thinking as I'm looking at these numbers, knowing what I already know or you shared about PVOS?
And I think that goes back to what Dr. McGinley was saying about the number of teachers that we're bringing in year after year and getting them acclimated to curriculum and instructional practices. This past year, we looked at our PVOS data it's in and seen substantial good growth among our schools. You'll be able to see that in the school performance profiles where our schools are achieving at a high value added level this year and achieving well. In the area of growth. So there are correlations that we can make between the growth and the actual performance that we can point out.
So Dr. Marseille, we're fine to stop there. And I know we need to end, but I want to acknowledge the folks who came out to join us today. If you would let Dr. Marseille know your name or when you come to the mic, because we're being videoed today. If you have a question, please ask, and we will do our best to respond.
Yes, thank you for taking questions, even though we're really out of time. My name's Eileen Shanahan, and I'm from Belmont Hills Elementary School. I have 2 children there. Just a couple of quick questions. One is, I think you already do this, but these slides will be published on the website after the meeting? Okay, great. And then, so there are no more modified PSSA tests. Do they still do extended time, though, for students with special needs? Yes?
Yes, they do.
For students who qualified? Oh, On occasion?
No, if it's on their IEP, they do the modification.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. And then I'm just curious, maybe just an observation. Penguin has had a lot of growth, so I'm just curious, what are they doing? I'd like to be a fly on the wall and just see what they're doing that is so successful. And also, I have a question, but it might be rhetorical because it's kind of a broad question. I wonder, philosophically, how important are these scores to us? Like, how do we value these scores in terms of a school district? Do we look at these numbers and this, obviously this is not the whole picture to us, but is it 70% of the picture, 20% of the picture? It's not really an answerable question, I think, but I'm just curious if we could, at some point, put this in context of, how we view this. I don't know if there are any questions there, but thank you for listening.
It's 47.6% of the picture.
47.6, thank you. That's helpful. Yes.
Hi, Maureen O'Leary from Narberth. I just had a quick question. Have you looked at this data normalized to the state averages? Because those tend to change throughout the years also.
We have in the past, we've looked at that.
Your mic, please.
We have looked at that in the past, in previous years. This year, right now, with the way profiles are and the release of data at the state level, the state averages have not been shared with us yet through the profile reports. Once they are available, we'll be making that analysis.
Okay. Does that clean up these trends at all?
It wouldn't necessarily clean up our trends within our district because our scores are what they are, but what we can see is how much further we're exceeding the state averages, right. And comparing how Lower Merion students are performing in relationship to the rest of the state. We could see the gaps between those two measures.
Thank you.
And historically, we've done extremely well in terms of our data points versus versus the state.
Absolutely.
But we do have those slides. Brian does have a 300 slide presentation that at any time
No, thank you.
can share that with you.
Unless it's over dinner.
That might include dessert too.
Absolutely, a couple of them. Again, thank you to all our presenters today and all the information that was shared with the committee, and we look forward to extending the conversation on our data, PSSA results, and beyond. I'd like to remind folks that our next meeting is Tuesday, November 5th. Is that correct? Did we change? Oh, is it? I'm looking at my calendar and I'm not sure if it's accurate or not. Dr. Marcia, you have a date on your calendar?
Yes, I do. I have it as. I have it the 4th.
The 4th,
Yes.
okay. On the Monday?
On a Monday.
Okay, so different date, all right.
Yes.
So Monday, that's right, Monday, November the 4th, 8:30 in this room. Okay?
Yeah,
So
one last thing too,
please.
I apologize. I want to inform the board that at our next policy meeting, just as an FYI, there'll be more discussion about that at the policy meeting, but there are several policies that are germane to the curriculum around policy 107, which is the
Yes.
course guide. We also have policy 108, which is the adoption of textbooks, and policy 109. These are resources and materials. These policies, 107, 109, are really standard policies that we've gone through before. There are some minor changes in grammar and language, but the substance has remained the same. But I wanted to inform you that that is going for review to the policy committee.
Okay, on
I'll
this
keep you
Friday.
updated. Yes.
Thank you very much. So with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.